Good afternoon, everybody. It is so awesome to have you join us here today. Today, we're going to be talking about building a budget. But first, we wanted to say hello to everybody. It's good to have you here. So, we're going to turn on our web cameras again at the end. But we wanted to turn them on here at the beginning just to say hello to everyone. So, we're going to turn those off. We're going to go through a couple of housekeeping items and then we're going to jump right into the presentation. So thank you again for joining us today. Bye. All right. All right. So we are going to start with a couple of housekeeping items. If you have joined us for the last couple of presentations, this will be the same stuff that we covered. But we just want to start by talking about some of the webinar options that you guys see on your end. So when you came in, you saw a function over to your right that looked sort of like this. So let's kind of talk about some things that you can do. So the very top one, maybe not on this one, but hopefully on future ones, we'll be able to unmute and we'll be able to have people talk. Underneath that, you see you have a hand option. So we can raise your hand. So several points during the presentation, we may ask you guys to do that, to raise your hand and kind of let us know, give us some feedback. And if you ever have a question, you would also raise your hand. And speaking of questions, right underneath that, we have a question bar. So if you guys ever want to chat with us, ask us a question, or if during the presentation we ask you a question and you'd love to send us your awesome answers, you can definitely do that here in the questions function. You can talk with us. Underneath that, you see a little picture of a document. This is where we have the handouts. So we have, this is a picture from our last webinar, but today we have handouts attached that you can download and that you can save or print off. I'll also be including these in a follow-up email. So if you don't get them today, don't worry about that. We'll make sure that we send those out. But there are some handouts here, building your budget handout. Talks a little bit about what we're talking about today, plus has some blank templates in there. So go ahead and take a look at that. But again, we will be sending those out in a follow-up email. All right, so we talked about some of our webinar options. Let's talk a little bit about questions, and hopefully you guys have them. So as we go through the presentation, if you think of any questions, here's what I'd love for you to do. Get a pen and a piece of paper and write down your awesome questions, because we're going to have a Q&A session after the presentation where I'm going to ask you to send all those in. So this will help us kind of keep the presentation going, and it will also, we might cover the question that you have, and then we'll have a good session of Q&A at the end. So make sure that you write those questions down, and we will guarantee to save some time at the end for those. Also, this webinar is going to be recorded. So in a follow-up email, you guys will get a link to this recording. You'll also get the handouts as an attachment. This recorded presentation goes on our website. So under seminars are various recorded presentations and live webinars coming up. So this would be put out there as well. So if you want to share this presentation, you can have people go to our website or you can forward them the link. So all of this that we talk about today will be recorded and forwarded to you. At the end, we will be doing a door prize drawing. So how we are doing the door prize, if you registered with your name and email, if you're attended here, you automatically go in the door prize. So if there is somebody in addition at your location that was not able to register, we want to make sure that they get to participate in the door prize as well. So if you have someone there watching with you and they did not register, if you will send in their name, their first name, their last name, and their email address, we'll make sure to get them added in the door prize drawing. And Miss Ratliff, we've already added Alan, so you're good to go. All right, so what we're going to be talking about today, we are going to do our presentation on budgeting. We're going to save some time at the end for Q&A, and then after we've completed those, we're going to do the most exciting thing. We're going to do the door prize drawing. Keisha's going to do that for us, and we're going to draw for a $25 electronic gift card. All right, so with that, let's get started with the presentation. All right, so today we are talking about building your budget, building a budget. So if you've ever been to any of our seminars seminars in the past on budgeting, you'll see some common things that we've talked about before. We have taken many of those things and kind of added them together. So this is somewhat of a updated presentation on building your budget. So, before we get started talking about how to build the budget, we need to know why we're doing it. Why are we here today? So, what can budgeting? And budgeting is really just managing your resources, managing your cash flow. Why would you want to do that? How can that help? So, budgeting, knowing where your money is going, is able to help provide you security and or freedom. So it can get you flexibility, security in the things that you're looking for. Is we know where our money's going and we can manage it. It's not managing us. We can get where we want to go. It is also helping us realize our goals. So maybe you have a goal for buying a home, going on vacation, sending your kids to college, opening a business. Being able to manage your money can help you realize and reach those goals. Budgeting also makes, and this is the biggest thing, this is probably the thing we should have listed first, it makes our money work for us. So we are telling our money what to do instead of it telling us what we want it to do, and we are managing this resource money and making it work for us. So there's lots of reasons why to budget, but here are some of the top ones. So I want to talk a little bit before we get started about using this tool of budgeting. Before we get started, we need to know a little bit more of the why. So we are planning this journey and you have a destination in mind. Maybe it's just getting a better hold on managing your resources so that you can do things that you want to do. Maybe it is going on that vacation. Maybe it is reducing stress so that you feel a little more at peace with your finances. And just like with any journey, we need to think about a couple of things before we get started, just trying to jump in and do some planning. So the first thing we need to think about is where is it we want to go? So let's say you're taking a trip and you're going to put something in your GPS. You're going to put your destination. Where is it that you want to go? We need to have that picture in mind. The other thing we need is we need the starting point. So you need to know where you're at, an honest view of where you're at. What are some things that you might want to adapt and change? Where are you standing? Where do you want to go? We need to know those two things before we start to plan that route, before we start to make those plans and take those actions. We need to have our destination and our starting point in mind. All right, so let's jump into the budgeting because budgeting is a good tool to help us plan our route. So when we talk about budgeting, we're going to break it down to the basics. So if we're looking at budgeting, managing that money, we have money coming in as income, and we have money going out as expenses. So our main objective, very simplistically, even though budgeting can be very complex, if we break it down, our goal is to have more income than expenses. Our income is greater than our expenses. And so we have these two variables. We can reach this goal in three variations. We can increase income, we can decrease expenses, or we can do a combination of the both. So I know that budgeting is a lot more complex, but when we break it down to the basics, we have these two variables and just a couple variations that we can work with. So when we're trying to find more money in our budget, this is what we want to go to. So let's talk about the steps of budgeting. What do we need to do as far as steps go so we can kind of put things in order? And it's like eating an elephant. We don't want to do this all at one time. We want to take it bite by bite. So we're going to make the analogy of budgeting is like cleaning out a closet. So if you see this image here, the before picture is very messy. It's hard for me to get to what I want to go to. So if we think of our budget like this is very hard for us to manage and to know what we have, what we're working with. And so we want to kind of start to get that in order so we can get that working for us. So we want more of a picture of the after. So budgeting can be like cleaning out a closet. So when we're cleaning out a closet or setting up a budget, the very first thing we want to do is we want to list everything. I have to be aware. So our very first step is awareness. I have to be aware of what it is that I'm working with. So like with cleaning out a closet, the very first step there is pulling everything out. So I am looking at everything in that closet. I'm aware of what's in there. The second step is organizing it, right? So I might take all these different things out of that closet that I've put in the floor, and I might have a trash pile. I might have a take it to the thrift store pile. I might have keep it because my grandmother gave it to me pile. I start to organize things into like groups, things that go together. Start to get a little clearer picture of what it is that I'm working with. The third thing that I do there is I start to prioritize, right? So I'll look at those different piles and I'll say, you know, I don't need 5 of these. Maybe I need 2, or maybe I can do without some of these items. So I start to prioritize. This is also where in my budgeting step, where I start to look to find more capacity. So I start to prioritize what I need, what I maybe can modify, and looking for some areas to find some more capacity so I can get those working in the ways that I need them to. My fourth step is setting up my environment. I want to automate it. So I've done all this work on cleaning up this closet and organize it and prioritizing things. I want to automate it so that I am setting myself up for success. So the bottom line that we've talked about a lot of times is we can talk a lot about theory, but it all comes down to the action that you take. And so, especially in this instance, if we can make that action easy, if we can remove a barrier, we're more likely to succeed. So we'll talk about automation a little bit at the end. And then the fifth thing, like with any other plan, when I set it, it's going to some pieces are going to work, some pieces are going to need to be modified, but I am always going to have to revise and adapt to the situation. So budgeting is no different. We'll want to revise it, and in revising it, sometimes we start back with step 1 and go back through the steps again. So let's talk about priorities. Priorities with our budgeting. So we know the different steps we want to take, but what are the priorities that the money is going, our income is going out? So we have money coming in. What priorities do we want to set on that money going out? So the very first thing that we want to do, and we'll talk about why in just a second, is very first place we want our income to go is to our emergency fund. We want to pay ourselves first. If we don't pay ourselves first, a lot of things usually get in the way, and this never happens. Then we have maybe a transmission go out on our car, and instead of having the funds to be able to control that, and fix that and turn it into an inconvenience, I then have to go out and borrow the money. So at this point, maybe I'm paying someone extra for some financing, for some money, or I'm having to borrow it, and then they're getting to kind of advise me on how to use that. So I want to stay in control. I want to stay flexible and independent. I want to make sure that I have that emergency fund, that self-insurance plan against life happening. So that's the very first thing I want to do. After that, I want to make sure that my money is going towards those essential expenses, so those things that it takes to live. After that, I'm paying down debt and or saving for different items that I have that I want to do, goals that I want to realize. After that, I'm putting my money towards non-essential expenses. And we'll talk about non-essential expenses. Those can be very tricky sometimes and show up as essential expenses. So remember, we said essential expenses are those things that it takes to live. So sometimes we have, a phone or different TV type of packages, entertainment packages showing up as, this makes my life a whole lot better. But if I break it down to if I didn't have this, would I be able to live? That's what we want to look at non-essentials. So a lot of times here we're having wants show up as a need. So there's areas here where we can modify and also reduce. And then our last area that we want our income or our money going is discretionary spending. So this is the eating out, the entertainment, above normal hygiene and clothing, things in that area, self-care, um, just the things I'm telling you, I'm one of the world's worst. I can get money out of my account, $20 out of the ATM, and don't even know where it's going. So I just spend all of that on discretionary spending. I don't know where it's going. It's hard to manage something if you don't know what it's doing. So let's do a little exercise on priorities. Let's talk about those for a second. And so why would we say that we wanted emergency fund to be first? Why would we say we wanted to pay ourselves first? It's kind of counterintuitive to what we feel. We all feel that we have a big need to pay those essential expenses first. As soon as I get paid, I need to keep a roof over my head. I need to buy groceries, keep the electricity on. That's absolutely true, but let's look at a scenario on why we would want to make the emergency fund first. So this jar represents our capacity or our income. So let's say we get paid and we want to go out and spend some of that money, make ourselves feel better, go out to eat, buy something new. We go out and we do that. And then we're like, oh, hey, yes, I have to pay that rent. So we're still doing that, or the mortgage, pay the utilities, buy some groceries, pay some of my other bills. So we're making sure we get those responsibilities done. And once those are done, we like, look at all the money I have left. I can go out, I can buy a new outfit, I can go to a concert, I can do several different things. And then the poor little piggy, okay, sure, look at that poor little piggy. I said that I wanted to have savings, right? So savings is future spending, whether it's future spending for a goal or future spending for an emergency. And in this scenario, I didn't have anything left to put in that future spending account. So this is a big example of why I want to shift those priorities and shift this scenario. Pay myself first. I want to make sure I pay those essential expenses, things that it takes to live. So my mortgage, my utilities, buy groceries, want to pay those credit card bills if I have those, make sure I get that done. And I still have some capacity to go out and do entertainment and eat out, and uh, maybe I'd give to a charity. If you're like me, maybe you buy a lot of coffee. I still have money to do that. But I have saved. I have saved for myself. I have paid myself first, made myself and staying in control a priority. So our goal here is not just talking about how to get in control, but it's how to stay there. And an emergency fund can help us do that. All right, so let's go back to the steps of budgeting and let's kind of go through some of those today. So our first step was going to be list it. Our second step, we're going to organize it. Our third step, we're going to prioritize it. Our fourth step, we're going to automate it, set up that environment. And the fifth step is revise it. So just like with any process in life, anything that we do, we want to make that a habit, and it is never going to be set it and let it go and it fits all situations. We're going to have to revise that, and a lot of times we end up in a cycle where we go back through the steps. So knowing the steps, knowing what I need to take so that I'm able then to revise it and adapt it to my situation. All right, so let's look at the first thing. So let's list it. So if I am putting together a budget, the very first thing that I want to do is know everything that I have to work with. So maybe I'm getting all those bills, knowing all the things that I need to pay. I'm keeping receipts. I can look in online banking. I can look at my mobile banking. I can just even write stuff down. So the very first thing that I want to do though is make sure I have a comprehensive list or source of information on all of my bills, all of my sources of income, especially all of those things that may not be monthly expenses. They may be sometimes be unexpected expenses. We want to make sure that we're aware of those and write those down and plan for those also. My second step is I want to organize it. So I want to take all that information from my first step where I've listed it, and I want to put it in some kind of template. So this can look different for you, but we want to put it, maybe it's in a budgeting template. Maybe I just start categorizing things that are similar, but I want to start organizing that in a way that I can start working with it. So in this situation here, we've taken everything that we've listed and we've used a budgeting template. This is a blank budgeting template is in your handout. We have looked at our sources of income. We've looked at our, started grouping together our savings, essential expenses, our debts, non-essential discretionary. We started grouping things together, so we've organized it. Now, on my third step, and this is going to be the first time around, some of the most work that you're doing in your budget. So you've got everything together, you've organized it. Now I am starting to look here. So in this situation, I am negative $300 every month. I might can find that bridge that gap 1 month. Maybe I can go finance that, but this is not going to be a sustainable ongoing scenario. So I'm going to want to look at what I have going on in my current budget, and I'm going to maybe want to highlight some areas that I might need to adapt to make things work for me, to find some more money to get done what I would like to get done. So in this scenario, I've gone through and I've highlighted some areas. Number one, I don't have anything in emergency fund, and I know I want that to happen. So what are some ways that I can do that? I've highlighted some things that I can maybe modify and add to. So step number 3 is going to be probably first go around a lot of the work in setting up a budget. So we have another template in your handout that we can use to find more capacity. So we are taking some of the yellow highlighted areas from this first step, and we're looking at where can we find some more capacity. So we're looking at where can we increase income. So maybe I can get a part-time job, and I'm looking at how much money that would add to my budget every month, and what actions do I need to take. And even though I've put all these things on here, so we can look under decrease expenses, from my highlighted budget on the previous page, I have identified a lot of areas that I can modify. And so I've identified maybe in the utilities, I can turn off my lights and reduce my heat, how much money I think I can save there. I can go ahead and start that now. But if I'm looking at something bigger, like the bottom one we have here in decreasing expenses, maybe my rent, maybe I want to change locations. That's not something I can do immediately. This is also just like the saying with our overall budgeting, we're eating an elephant. So we take it one bite at a time. If I've got 10 things on this list, if I try to do them all at once, I can be very overwhelmed. So this is my plan, finding more capacity, my budgeting, or all my individual plans, even though the action may not need to be taken right now. So that's why we have an area on there for the date that I want to do that. So finding more capacity, we have ways that we can increase income. We have some ways that we can decrease expenses. And then we have an area on there called negotiate contracts. So this can be part of your decreasing expenses, or we can pull that out. This is where I have maybe a contract for phone service, internet cable bill, or maybe it's some of my debts that I need to call and negotiate. So negotiating some of those contracts there. So after I found some ways that I could find more capacity in my budget, I want to rework that scenario to ensure that this is something that is working for me. So after I've made these modifications or eliminations or increased something, I then want to put it into a proposed. So this is not a working plan yet. This is a proposed plan. Here is how my projected or proposed budget would look. And I can see that, oh, did I go down? It didn't go down. My computer went black. I am so sorry. Give me just 1 second. It's still good? Well, see, I can see no presentation. Okay, are we back? I am so extremely sorry about that, everybody. All right, so, ah, let's see where we were. All right, so we were talking about finding more capacity. So prioritizing it, finding more capacity, and then we were putting that into our proposed budget. So as you can see in the scenario here, we're getting a part-time job, we're making some modifications that we talked about in finding more capacity. In this scenario, we are able to start adding to that emergency fund. We're paying down debt. We are planning for non-routine expenses. And we are still covering ourselves on our essential expenses. And even though we've modified some of our non-essential and our discretionary, we are still able to do those as well. So let's go back through those steps again. We wanted to list it. So we've gotten everything that it is we're working with. We want to organize it, so we put it into a template. We saw what areas may not be working. We identified those areas when we got to prioritize it. We started looking at ways that we could find more capacity, and then we put those into a proposed budget. So now we've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of planning. So we want to put those into action. So step number 4 is automating it and making sure we're putting those into action. So I found a couple of sayings that I really liked. The first one is knowing is not enough, we must apply. Wishing is not enough, we must do. So we are learning a lot about budgeting, different tools, and we're putting plans in place, but we have to take action. Also, your environment will eat your goals and plans for breakfast. So this is what we're talking about in automating. We're going to want to make sure that we are setting our environment up for success. So We want to see, right now we're the present self, we're doing the planning, we've done all of this work, and a lot of times it happens that there's a big disconnect with the future self. So let's take this scenario of putting money in our emergency fund. So as we're sitting here planning and we're doing our proposed budget and we're pulling all our stuff together, we know we want to pay ourselves first and put money in our emergency fund. And then what happens? Our future self or our doer gets paid and we feel like we've gone without. So the very first thing that we want to do is maybe change some of those things, or maybe the very first thing we want to do is pay those essential expenses. And we go through our budget and we spend all of our money. And it's kind of like that scenario before with the little pigs in the jar. There's nothing left to put in our emergency fund. And so then something happens where we needed those funds and we have this disconnect. So what we want to do to bridge that gap is we want to be aware and we want to set up our environment. So your whole setting up your budget, listing everything, knowing everything, doing your proposed is bringing awareness. Your automating it is setting up your environment. So doing these two things, we can bridge the gap between our present self and our future self. So let's talk a little bit about what that example might look like, and it can be different for everybody. But if I wanted to automate several pieces of my budget, I wanted to keep those priorities, how might I do that? So we are looking here at the income piece. If I want to automate the income piece, maybe I have direct deposit set up. So maybe I have that set up with my employer, or if I receive benefits, that they direct deposit those funds into my checking account. If I have a check for something, I can do remote deposit capture, or I can use an ITM or ATM and deposit that money there. I can also do account transfers. So maybe I'm transferring it from another member is transferring it to my account, or I'm doing account transfers between accounts to get them in the places that I need them to use them for income. So talking about our priorities of our money going out, how would we set up that environment? So the very first thing we want to do is we want to pay ourselves first. We want that emergency fund. So we could set up an automatic transfer. So this is a reoccurring automatic, we don't have to think about it, transfer that money would go into a fund that we use for emergencies. So as soon as we have money coming in, we're automatically telling it what we want it to do. The next thing we could do on our essential expenses like our housing, utility, car payment, insurance, things like that, we can set up bill pay. So again, we are removing that barrier of having to maybe manually write a check and mail that in, maybe go to each website, taking an action. We have it automatically set up where we can do bill pay on our essential expenses. Then we have some other items in our essential expenses that maybe we can't do bill pay on. So some of those are grocery and gas, things that we buy for hygiene, maybe some of our medical expenses. So there's several things that we can do here. A lot of people like to take out, so I'm looking back at my budget. What is the money that is for those specific areas? I want to make sure that I stick with that. Maybe I get money out, get cash out. A lot of people like to use an envelope system. So they may write groceries on an envelope and put whatever was in their budget, they put that amount of cash in the envelope. So maybe you're getting cash out for these specific areas. Maybe I have another checking account. Maybe I have a checking account just for groceries and gas, and I can do a transfer over to that checking account from my main account, and I can use a debit card just for that, or maybe I can do a reloadable card. So there's several ways that I can do that, but the main thing I want to do on all of these is I've set up my budget, and what I want to go to places, I want to make sure that it's going there first. I want to make sure that I am moving that out and that it's not sitting in my general fund. The next priority I have is to pay debts or save for future goals. I can do bill pay on some of my debts. Maybe they're credit card bills or student loan bills or medical bills. I can set up bill pay for those. If I am definitely want to plan for non-routine expenses, So I can transfer money over for those. Maybe I have a future goal of buying a car or going on a vacation, and I have an account set up for that, and I can do an automatic transfer. So remember, automatic transfers are things that are set up automatically so I don't have to think about those. My next priority is my non-essentials. So maybe for internet and cable and phone and some memberships that I have to places, I can do bill pay and have those set up. So again, here I am telling my money what I want it to do. And then for my discretionary, so I have planned out in my budget, in my proposed budget, how much money I want to spend on each of these areas. So this is like with our cash and accounts up in essential expenses. Maybe I want to do the same thing with some of my discretionary expenses. So I can have those each separate, or I can just group together discretionary all together and say this is the amount of money I'm spending on eating out and gifts and entertainment. I can take that out in cash. I can put that in a separate account. So this is an example of what we might do to set things up automatically. So after we've brought awareness by doing a proposed budget, we want to set the environment up, and this is a way that we might be able to do that. Now, you will have your own individual ways. Everybody has an individual plan, but there's a lot of tools out there. The key to it is setting our environment up for success. And our very last step of budgeting, just like with everything else that we do in life, is we might want to adapt it. Our goal is sustainability, not just getting there, but staying there, sustainability. We have to be fluid and able to adapt and able to sustain. So if the plan doesn't work, you might want to change the plan, but never change the goal. So taking action, here are the 3 steps that I encourage you to do to take action. Get a working budget plan, whether you use the template that's in the handout or you use another application or use a spreadsheet. Get a working budget plan so you know the different pieces and you know where you want to tell your money to go. You find more capacity. So there is the blank capacity worksheet, and there's a lot of other places that you can do that, a lot of tools online, but finding more capacity to help me put the budget together and then set it up for success. Automate your budget. Here's some other resources and tools that can kind of help support you along this journey. It can be a coach and a cheerleader. We have financial counseling here at Redstone with the Redstone, our Member Solutions Department. This is in your handout, as well as I will send you guys a recorded copy of this presentation so you'll have this information. But this is their email address and their telephone number. We also have, as support, we've partnered with Balance Financial Fitness. They additionally, they have a ton of financial information on there. They are also a good source of backup counseling from Member Solutions. So their contact information, the website, and telephone number is on there. All right, so thank you guys so much for listening to our presentation on budgeting. Now we are going to take some questions from you guys. So I am going to turn over, Kaysher, I'm going to make you the presenter and turn that over to you. And if you want to read out some of the questions that we have, and we will do our question and answer portion of our presentation.
All right, perfect. So I believe I am all set up here. Um, as we wait for some questions to come in, if anyone has any additional questions, I did kind of want to add something or like share something that I kind of do I always love when Brianna talks about, automating it. That's kind of something I started sharing with, my students when I go into schools, or I guess when I used to go into schools. And that's a huge thing because, especially, as technology advances, people are always trying to find ways to do things without having to go out, right? So automating it's huge. One thing that I found that also helps me is I'll do a lot where like I have two main credit cards basically right now. One I use for most of my purchases so I can get points and stuff on it, something like that. And then one that I use specifically for subscriptions, anything that I'm subscribed to, because I know it's easy to let those kind of get out of hand and then we forget about them, which I know I did a lot. So I would always put one on just on a separate card that I know. So that way, when I get my statements, I can literally see all that I'm subscribed to at one time. I've seen people do that with like checking accounts and stuff like that. Whatever you can to kind of just make it easier to watch, right? Um,
I love that. Thank you for sharing those tips. So that just brought to my mind, if you have any tips, not just even questions, but if you have any tips on budgeting, please send those in so that we can share those with everybody because that was really good, Keisha. Thank you.
yeah, for sure. Um, let's see what kind of questions we have coming in here. Awesome. We did have a comment from, I believe it's Miss Acacia Moore. I hope I pronounced that right. I know what it's like to have my name mispronounced, so I'm totally sorry. But she did say, great job with the presentations. Totally excited about upcoming online webinars. And I believe you can see all those too, the ones that are up and coming on our seminars page.
Absolutely. And so when you finish the question and answer, I'll take everybody to that site before we do the door prize.
Perfect. And we did have one question from Ms. Jackie Carter. She's asking, when you struggle with saving because you have more debt than income, how exactly can you start saving? How do you start saving?
That is a fantastic question. Fantastic. So the very first thing, and everybody's going to be a little bit different. So this is where I would recommend that you get a one-on-one counselor for support. But the very first thing is finding more capacity because there is absolutely no way to save if you are not able to pay your rent and able to eat. So the very first thing that I would say is, list everything out, know what you're doing with, organize it there so you know where the gaps are, and then look at where can I find more capacity. And so this is going to be personal. Personal finance is personal. So it's going to be personal on where you could increase income, where you could modify some of the ways that your money is going out. But the first thing to being able to save is finding that capacity and then make that a priority, right? Find that capacity, but don't do all those work and make all of those modifications without making it work for you. So automate it, get it over into that account at the very beginning. So I know that wasn't a really, the answer that everybody wanted, but the first thing is find more capacity and then automate it. And the bigger thing is find your cheerleader and a financial counselor. They'll be able to help step you through those different scenarios.
Perfect. And the only other question was again from Ms. Moore. She was asking, how soon will a copy of the presentation come out? So Brianna confirmed it'll come out today. So
Yes.
you'll definitely be getting it before the end of the day.
I'll be sending that out today. All right. Is that all the questions we have?
I believe so.
Okay. Let me go back so I can show this screen. So I'm going to show this and then we'll do the door prize drawing. So what we are looking at right now, this is the Redstone site. So if you go to redfcu.org, so our seminars, if you come down to the bottom, or you can just type it in the search function. If you click on seminars right here, it takes you out to where we have all of our upcoming and all of our recorded seminars. So there's several here from Balance, and then we're adding a ton of the ones that we have done. So our past one that we did 2 weeks ago on digital financial services. So we're talking about automating things. That webinar is recorded and out there, talking about finding capacity, right? So that webinar that we did a month ago about 30 ways to trim your budget, that one is out here. And then some upcoming ones that we have. So this may be a really good one. Then one we have in 2 weeks is saving with a purpose. So we're going to be talking about why do we save and how to do that. So we have not only recorded webinars, but we have some upcoming live webinars out there that can be a great source of information. The other thing on our website that can be a good source of information and a good resource is either here under tools and discounts, if you go to the bottom where it says financial resources. Again, we have information listed here for how to get in touch with Member Solutions and our Balance team. And there's a link to 211, which is a comprehensive database of all the resources available in the Madison County area and others. So this can help us find capacity when we're not using our financial resources. We can use some others. We can sometimes find some capacity to do the things we want to do, like savings. Awesome. All right, Kaysher, would you like to do our door prize drawing? I'm going to switch it back over to you and let you do our door prize for us.
Perfect. So I believe I have everyone who stuck it out with us for the entire presentations listed here. So let's go ahead and pull that over here and we will get this wheel spinning. Ooh, maybe, there we go.
Woohoo, Mr.
Awesome.
Gamble, awesome. So you'll get an email, so be watching for an email. I believe it's coming from Vanilla Gifts. You'll be getting a email containing an electronic gift card for $25. So be watching out for that. So let's turn our web cameras on and we will say goodbye to everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. If you have any questions on how we can help you, how we can support you, find some information, some ideas on some topics for the future, if you will go to financial education at redfcu.org, if you'll email us there, we will be glad to get in touch with you. This will be the email that you guys will be receiving today with a copy of the link from today's recorded presentation and the handout. So you can use that email to get in touch with us at any time, and we will be more than happy to reach back out to you. So thank you again for joining us today, and we will see you in 2 weeks when we are talking about saving with a purpose. Have a great day.
Bye.